Case number 2015-V-033, Navarre Marina and Boardwalk, represented by James Dabney. They are requesting 3 variances. The first variance request is to reduce the right-of-way landscape strip from 10 foot to 5 foot. The second variance request is to allow shrubs in lieu of trees within the parking area at a ratio of 4 shrubs for every tree. The third variance request is to reduce the shoreline protection zone setback from 50 foot from the mean high water line to 0 foot from the mean high water line to accommodate a boardwalk with retail booths and kiosk, and you do have a comment. The subject site is located at 8495 Navarre Parkway, which is east of Highway 87 South in the Navarre community. The subject site is on HCD, Heart of Navarre, which is Highway Commercial Development. This is an aerial of the subject site and the surrounding properties. A close-up of the subject site. The existing land use is commercial, with commercial to the north and west and public-owned property to the east. The subject site has a small portion of the property located within a VE flood zone. The subject site is located within a Category 3, 4, and 5 storm surge zone. This is the proposed plot plan. There's a light blue dashed line, which would be the shoreline protection zone. The red line shows the VE flood zone. This is the adjacent property to the west, subject site's behind us. This is looking at the back part of the adjacent parcel to the west. Looking west down Navarre Parkway, subject site's behind us. Looking north and west, subject site's behind us. Looking north. This is looking east, the subject site's on our right. This is looking through the subject site to the adjacent parcel on the east. This is looking south, the subject site's behind us. This is looking into the subject site from the north. And this is looking at the southern portion of the subject site, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Darlene. Applicant, please. If we get your name and address, please, sir.
James Dabney, 9200 Military Trail.
We're looking for Dabney, go ahead. We'll probably take these things separately, so after your presentation.
Okay. Based on the 3 variances we're looking, obviously we're doing the variance request for the landscape buffer from Highway 98 and the property. Basically, we're trying to look towards the future. We know 98 is going to be expanded, so they're going to be coming in, and taking up as much of that road as they need to. So we're trying to get as much of it now as we can to be in compliance with what they're going to be looking for. We've got a request in with DOT right now for all the turn lanes and stuff. Request 2 was for the shrubs. We're surrounded by 3 sides of high tension lines, so the trees obviously become an issue on the main corridor for the landscape on the right-of-way. And then the shoreline protection is the same as you've seen in the pictures. It's a 150-foot wide or 150-foot deep lot. You take 50 foot here, 50 foot there, you've got 50 foot to build on, and good luck trying to find parking. So what we're trying to do is just trying to, I've already have property to the west of me that has I believe, close to a 0 setback that's already been implemented. In the previous meeting that we had in, I think, 9 of 2013, this was brought up. We've been working on this project with Army Corps of Engineers, state of Florida, to do the marina and do the fuel and all that stuff. In that year and 7 months, we've been able to obtain all of our required permits, Corps, Department of Environmental Protection, and state permits to build the marina and the dock. And all we're doing now is trying to finish the portion of the boardwalk that was presented back in that same time frame back in 2013. We're just trying to get those variances that had been discussed that we knew that we were going to have to get in order to fulfill our project.
Okay. From the photos, Mr. Dabney, it looked like most of the front area fronting the Navarre Parkway is already asphalted.
It is.
Would you have to dig up some of that to make
No,
a
it's just going to
landscape?
be restriped, and we have to add a little portion of asphalt
Right.
to accommodate the parking.
Okay, and at one time, correct for staff, the parking area used to require a tree and shrubs, and the shrubs were eliminated, and it did become an option either or, so this is why the variance has to be in here for the shrubs in lieu.
Well, yeah, in the heart of Navarre, shrubs are still required.
Okay.
In the letter from Ms. Statler in here, it explains that because, and as Mr. Dabney said, if power lines are present, the trees can't be planted within 20 feet of the power lines, and they need to be relocated within the interior of the site, or if that's not possible, then the code already allows replacing trees with shrubs without a variance. So that's not what he's requesting the variance for. Within the interior of the site, there's also, in addition, there's supposed to be 1 canopy tree and 4 shrubs planted for every 12 parking spaces. And so that's what he's requesting the variance from.
And Mr. Dabney, can you kind of go through for the board here what your vision is for this, for the structures that you're going to have at near the water line, the boardwalk with retail booths and kiosks? I see the diagram, you know, the plot plan, but
Basically, what they're going to be is and what we're envisioning doing is making those basically like a temporary building that can be moved if a hurricane is coming. So they're all going to have quick disconnect twist locks. They're going to be slide-in portable buildings that fall into place, basically can be removed at, obviously if I'm putting up the kind of money that we're spending, I want to be able to preserve some of that money. So if a hurricane is coming, we want to be able to move those buildings in a timely manner and get them out of there, and basically have just the structures there, the structure of the pilings.
and the actual units that you put in there, what
It's going to be on skids.
are they? What type of construction are they?
It'll be basically Florida-approved building code buildings. The way it's going to be designed is going to look like an old, kind of a oldish western town look, kind of to match the East River Smokehouse look that we have now.
Okay. And I guess the question I had was, are there any compliance issues you'd have to do for Heart of Navarre architecture when it comes to site plan?
The architectural requirements for the Heart of Navarre were removed from the code. So what he's talking about doing in terms of using just these portable shed buildings as his retail kiosks, as long as a building code professional certifies that it meets the building code, and we would require that at the time of submittal for building permits, then technically he could do that. And it's my understanding that that's what you were intending to use, those wooden portable sheds lined up, and the site plan shows those with an 8-foot walkway in between.
Okay. And then just a personal comment, it seems like an 8-foot walkway seems awfully narrow for, a retail space, but,
Well, I mean, 8 foot on a retail space, the whole concept in retail that I've ever been into in a store, you go into a store, they're not giving you 4-foot aisleways. They're wanting to make you, oh, well, I got to get out of the way of this person to get into a retail store to go look at something. They want to, our goal is to have as much room as we can and have as much space as we can to accommodate the buildings, but we also want, if they go out the back, they have an area to look out over the water. People pay to come out and look at the water. That's why it's a tourist development area.
Other board member questions for the applicant? Okay, they're quite quiet tonight.
I just want to add, like I said, my in response to Mr. Jack Boney's citizen comments, We've met all the requirements for DEP, Army Corps of Engineers. We have turbidity curtain in place for sediments. We've done all the seagrass studies. You know, literally it took 1 year and 7 months to get this project permitted. And a lot of phone calls.
For the marina, right?
Sorry?
For the marina?
Correct.
Right.
But I mean, as far as his concern was, if we were building something with concrete or jetting down pilings, obviously the turbidity curtain is designed to keep the sediments and things like that in play.
Okay. If you'll have a seat, sir, I'm going to see if we have public comment on this. Is there anybody who'd like to address the board? Yes, ma'am, please. Going to have name and address?
Good evening. My name's Laurie Gallup, 1869 Flamingo Lane in Navarre.
And good evening.
Thank you. I'd like to first point out that the variance request to reduce the right-of-way landscape strip from 10 to 5 feet, first of all, this is the heart of Navarre area, and it needs to be beautified. That's why we had these restrictions on that area. If you go back and look at the photos that they were showing of it, it's just an asphalt lot right now, and it's very unappealing. So I would request that we continue with the trees and the proper landscaping that's supposed to be in the heart of Navarre area, because that's also an area where we're experiencing a lot of stormwater runoff, and it's polluting the sound. So we need to have more trees and green growing items there to help us with the stormwater runoff problems that we're having. Also, as far as 98 being expanded, that won't be happening in our lifetime. So I believe it would be proper to have trees planted there, and you wouldn't have an issue with having to remove them within the next at least 30 years, because 98's not going to get 6-laned anytime soon. I'd also like to point out that Navarre just recently will be receiving a grant, a $100,000 grant from the state of Florida to finally get some median beautification in that area. So we need to have the trees and the shrubberies and the proper plantings that should be in the heart of Navarre district to make that look presentable. As far as the request to reduce the shoreline protection zone from 50 feet to 0, please don't consider that. The shoreline protection zones are there for a reason. We're experiencing so much pollution in Navarre that the park that's right adjacent to this piece of property, it has to be closed to swimming constantly during the summer, and it's all because of pollution and the stormwater runoff that we've allowed to happen in Navarre because of the overbuilding and the not planning it, not making our growth smart. So I just encourage you to please think about that park that this property is adjacent to, and not do anything that's going to make the situation worse. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other citizens wish to comment? Mr. Dabney, you want to come back up and see and offer any rebuttal? You already addressed the written comments from Mr. Bonney. Any other comments?
The only comment I would have was these drawings that you have in front of you, they're engineered stamp drawings from a civil engineer who has done all the stormwater runoff and has accommodated for all the stormwater runoff. And all the stormwater runoff will be near the edge of the water underneath the raised deck, where all the plumbing and pipes and all the stuff, and you know, it's we're having our own bathrooms installed, so that's part of the marina or the boardwalk principle behind that. So, you know, that my people don't have to use the nice new bathrooms we have in Navarre. So we are building our own bathrooms, and we are going to have our own stormwater runoff retention areas that will not impede in what water is going into the sound.
Any other board member comments or questions? Ms. Edwards?
Oh, I don't necessarily have questions. I did want to say, I mean, just more of like discussion. I agree with Ms. Gallup on the not reducing the landscape buffer. But I also believe, too, having worked with DEP before, that they're not going to let you do anything that's going to compromise the environment. I mean, they're going to be all over you with a magnifying glass. So I do have some confidence after reading Mr. Bonney's letter here that, you know, if you've got the permits, you've had the engineering, and you've had DEP out there, I do have some confidence with them as far as environmental issues are concerned. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. And don't really have a question for you, Mr. Dabney.
Thanks. Mr. Wright?
Well, based on the property currently, I think Mr. Dabney's demonstrated that he took a piece of property previously and greatly improved upon it. And the current state of the asphalt parking lot that there is now does not look good. And I believe this would be a pretty large improvement.
Other board member comments? Mr. Cameron?
I do agree as well. First off, thank you for coming to the board and asking for permission. I know that's, we do appreciate that. And again, knowing what the DEP is going to put you through, I have faith and confidence in that. I have concerns with the parking as far as, wanting the variance of the trees. I know we just held another restaurateur to a very high standard down the highway, and he had to put out quite a bit of money just for a parking lot and the beautification he had to put around there. So I am kind of wary of allowing that variance, but thank you again.
Mr. Hawkins?
I kind of like all three variances. I can't see going to the expense of building the boardwalk and putting the kiosk and everything that you're doing there with the marina and then hiding them behind a bunch of trees. I like trees, but sometimes we're putting them in the wrong places. Shrubs can do the same amount of scrubbing and producing oxygen that a tree can, and if you're going to put 4 shrubs instead of 1 tree, I think we're even taking a step ahead. The encroachment in the shoreline protection zone, normally I say no, 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 but I can't see building a boardwalk 50 feet away from the water. Wouldn't make any sense to me. So I personally support all 3 as they're presented.
Ms. Brubaker?
I don't have too much problem with 2 and 3, but that is a pretty ugly site, the way it sits now, and I really do think that roadway beautification needs to take place.
And I just want to throw in one more thing, just talking about the landscape buffer. We have to keep in mind, though, that is the overlay of Heart of Navarre. And we've all seen it. If I drive by it every single day. It is unattractive. I don't think there'd be so many trees, Lonnie, that you wouldn't be able to see. But I definitely think that, for me, everything else is good. But I would still require the same 10-foot buffer for the landscape.
I would just say in response to that 5 feet of buffering and landscaping is 5 feet better than what we have now.
Mr. Wright?
Is your intent to just carry the same shrub line that you currently have in front of East River Smokehouse down the property?
Correct, with the exception of the base. Well, I think we're going to go with I think the Heart of Navarre has some new shrubbery that's required in that area. I don't believe that those shrubs that are there now fit the criteria that's there, but we have spoken with Tyler Falk Landscaping, and they're on. We're wanting to redo the whole front of the East River Smokehouse area to meet everything so it lines as one. And as far as Mrs. Brubaker's comment, I don't know if you were here 3 years ago when I built that East River Smokehouse, and you haven't seen what I've done with it. I've put a tremendous amount of money into that building, and it's by far the busiest location in Navarre, by far. Restaurant, period. And it's because we offer a service, and we offer something that the citizens of Navarre can bring their kids with the bounce houses that we have, the marina that's coming, and the boardwalk that will be coming. We're going to be offering something to every person in Navarre, something they've never seen. And to come in front of a board to ask permission to use your property that you just paid a lot of money for, that was a vision back in 2013 before I purchased the property. It's something that Navarre's growing. We either get on board or we get left behind. And for people to say 98's not going to expand and it's going to be 20 years, Well, why is Santa Rosa County spending buku bucks to do surveys? Go see consultations and get with people. I mean, are y'all not looking towards the future? I bet you I am, because I'm not going to spend my money twice. I'm not in the spending money twice business. So I'm going to do what is in the code's rules. I mean, and that's all I'm trying to do. I'm here to ask for what is sensible and has common sense.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Brubaker.
Maybe I didn't make myself clear. I said I didn't have any problem with 2 and 3. It was the landscape buffer that I would like to see stay in place.
Okay.
Additional board comments? Okay, we'll take these one at a time. Request number 1 is a variance to reduce the right-of-way landscape strip from 10 to 5 feet. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Motion for
Second.
approval and second. All right, this motion fails. 3 in favor, Mr. Wright, Mr. Hawkins, Mr. Kemp, and 4 opposed, Mr. Isaacson, Ms. Brubaker, myself, and Ms. Edwards. And Mr. Dabney, you are aware that that has an appeal route that you pursue. Request number 2 is variance to allow shrubs in lieu of trees required within the parking area at the ratio of 4 shrubs for every tree. Is there a motion on this issue?
Move for approval.
I have an approval motion
Second.
and second. And Darlene and Amanda are already ahead of us with the voting.
Bill, you haven't voted yet.
Got it. This motion passes 5-2. Ms. Brubaker, Mr. Wright, Mr. Hawkins, Ms. Edwards, and Mr. Kemp in favor. Mr. Isaacson, myself, opposed. So that one carries. Variance request number 3 is to reduce the shoreline protection zone setback from 50 feet to 0 feet to allow the boardwalk and associated retail space there. Is there a motion on that?
Also move for approval.
Motion for approval
Second.
and second. This one also is a 5-2 approval with the same makeup as the last vote. Mr. Isaacson, myself in opposition, Ms. Brubaker, Mr. Wright, Mr. Hawkins, Ms. Edwards, and Mr. Kemp in favor. So you got 2, Mr. Dabney, and if you want to take the third up, you know the route to follow on that. Okay. All right, we're up to variance number 34, item 7 on the agenda.
Case number 2015-V-034, Jeremy Moore is requesting 2 variances. First variance request is to allow the construction of an accessory structure prior to the construction of a primary residence. The second variance request is to allow construction of an accessory structure that is not subordinate to the primary residence. The proposed accessory structure is 3,000 square foot and the proposed residence is less than 3,000 square foot. The subject site is located at 2947 Bud Diamond Road, which is south of Harvest Road in the Brownsdale community. Subject site is zoned to agriculture. This is an aerial of the subject site and the surrounding properties. Close-up of the subject site. The existing land use is silviculture, with silviculture to the west and south, agriculture homestead to the north, and single-family residential to the east. The proposed plot plan, the proposed accessory structure is shown in red. The proposed home is shown in yellow on the lot that's behind it. This is looking south down Bud Diamond Road. The subject site's on our right. Looking east, the subject site's behind us. This is looking north, subject site's on our left. And this is looking into the subject site, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Darlene. Do we have the applicant here? If you'll come down, sir.
How are you?
And name and address, please.
My name is Jeremy Moore. Address, I've kind of got 2 right now, but 2947 Bud Diamond Road, Jay, Florida.
The photo's a really pretty area of the county this time of year up there.
So, oh yes, yeah. My wife and I, we from Pensacola, and we've always had a dream of moving out to the country and building a home and just doing different things. We're gardening and planting trees and this kind of thing. And we have a lot of stuff. We had a 3,000 square foot house in Pensacola that we sold. The market was, you know how the market is, and we had a chance to sell it, and we sold it. And this was about 10 months ago. At the time, we had plenty of equity in our house, and so we had sort of gotten ready to sell, and we sold. And when we were doing all the end stuff, we found out that all of our equity, we have a condo in Gulf Shores. And I hate to give you all the whole spill, but I will. We have a condo in Gulf Shores, and anyway, when we were young, when we got into this condo, and we did something sort of stupid, we tied our house in with the condo. My wife actually was handling the financing. And so whenever we sold our house, we had the money, the equity to start building right away, and our equity had to go to the condo. And so we ended up in a pickle. We decided to go ahead and sell, and we moved all our stuff into storage, and it has been in storage while we've been saving to build a house. We have the money to build, to dry in the main house. We actually have a plan to build a 3,100 square foot house on the site. My wife and I, it's kind of, we don't have any kids. Well, actually, we do have a kid now. My wife, we just found out we were pregnant this week, and so our plans might actually change. We've been trying to have kids for 10 years, and Easter Sunday, we found out we were going to be parents. So our plans might actually change, because we submitted this about a month ago, and we had planned on, our plan was to, the reason for the subordinate, because our house is actually bigger than the structure is going to be. We'd originally intended on, because it was just us two, we wanted to build this 3,000 square foot building, which we're going to need to move all of our stuff into, and all of our agricultural stuff as well. The key is when we went to do when I went, everyone was telling me, oh, you're ag, you can build this building. Well, when I went to do that, there was a line that said, are you going to use this thing for only, with an underline, agricultural purposes? And I'm a Christian, and I didn't want to lie about it. So I said, because it's not only, it is ag. We're going to use it for ag. I got bush hogs. I need tractors. A lot of stuff. We're developing the land. But I'm going to put building supplies in it. I'm going to put other things like that in it. We had intended on building that building, and we're going to build a garage. And we're going to put a little apartment above the garage, which was going to be our dwelling, while we saved to build the bigger house. Well, the pregnancy sort of put things I just got to be honest with you, my mind's all over the place right now. So I think that plans probably are going to change. We're leaning towards renting the storage sheds. I also have a warehouse where I've got some assets in there that I buy things from businesses that liquidate, and I remarket them on the internet, and I was intending on putting some of that in there as well. But I think we're going to continue the lease probably. I still would like to try for the approval, because as you guys can imagine, my whole life just got turned around upside down this week. And so, my new plan is to build the main house now, the 3,100 square foot house. But we may end up, you got to understand, we may end up shrinking it. We're building everything cash. We have a certain amount of cash. My business is pretty good business. We make a good bit of money with what we do and so, I'm able to do it, but I'm not able to do all three at one time. So I was trying to, anyway, I'm going to stop talking. You guys tell me what you want to do. I know, I thought I had a layup until I heard Alan speaking, Mr. Isaacson speaking to that other guy, and then I realized I might have a problem. But
okay, run us through again the timing. You've got building plans for the main house there. And so you're probably close to doing a building permit.
Yes.
On that, okay, and then you also have an accessory structure that you're going to put up possibly earlier. Is that still?
Well, I was rambling, I guess, but the intention was to build the accessory shed first, and honestly, like I said, that was the intention when I signed this thing up. But Now it seems like that might be changing, but that my intention was to build the thing, to put, I've got stuff out there already on the land. I've got bush hogs and stuff. I'm putting tarps over tillers and stuff, because we work out there all the time right now developing it. We've planted 20 peach trees, 20 apple trees, blueberry bushes. We're developing our land. It's been our dream. And, but everything's just everywhere. I'm paying $300 a month for storage sheds. And I really don't want to take up much of your time because I think my plans have changed. So I'll just, you know, I wanted the approval just in case.
Do you want to maybe consider asking us to table this for a month while you think about it?
No, let's just, whatever you decide, that's fine. Like I said.
Because I'm still confused as what exactly is going
I
to
know,
go in
and
and
I'm
where.
confused too. You got to understand, we've been waiting, 10 years we've been trying to get pregnant.
But I mean.
And the day before this meeting on Easter Sunday, we're pregnant.
But I mean, I
I
don't
know.
think it's
Here's the
an
thing.
issue.
What I would like, I'd like the security of if I changed my mind and if I decided to do it, if I could get the approval, I would take the approval to build the building first or to build the building subordinate. The main thing now, I think, is to build a building that is where the house is subordinate to the metal building. Because I know my funds and I know what I've got, and there is a chance that this dream home, because this was like our dream home we were going to do, and there is a chance that this dream home might be shrunk a little bit, because my main deal now is I got to get a house. Right now I'm living with my parents, because when we sold our house, we end up with my parents, and I've got an RV out at the land that we kind of go back and forth with. I've got to get bumping, so.
Okay. Other board members ask you a few questions. I know they're going to have.
Ask me whatever, it'd be
So,
easier.
Who's up first? Mr. Eisen, get your light on.
I actually, this being an agricultural area, to me, it's a little bit different than the residential property earlier. However, I do have a concern that you were talking about living in that accessory structure.
No, we're not living in the accessory structure. We were planning on building a garage. This was like a garage apartment that was eventually going to be like our car garage, because I've got the cash right now to build the building and to build the garage apartment, which was going to be about $65,000 for the garage apartment, about $50,000 for the building. The issue was I could get the metal building up quick, so I'd have a place to store stuff. The metal building could go up in just less than a month. So
As long as you're willing to say that you're not going to be living in this building.
we will not live in that accessory
I
building.
personally have no objection to this
Yeah.
because of the location
Yeah.
and the use of the property.
We're actually on 23 acres that we purchased, and we have, the way we've cleared the land is we have one access road that goes through it, and then it opens up into a big thing that nobody sees. Nobody even knows what we're doing back there. So it's not an issue of property values, or, it's just so.
And just for the record, because I know, since I was so adamant about the other one, this will probably get brought up at the commission meeting. It's the location, the use of the property, it being agricultural versus residential is why I don't have a problem with this issue.
Other board member questions? Mr. Hawkins.
I don't have a problem with this one either. You may want to look at that 3,100-foot home that you want to build and see if you can build something smaller, but then expand.
That's
to your
actually something we're
ultimate dream.
considering. Yeah, we're considering that, because that's why we're going to build the garage apartment, was because then we could have time to save to build the bigger house. And now I might look at doing something like that. I appreciate that idea. That's what we might be doing that.
Sounds like you listen to Dave Ramsey and you're going to cash flow everything.
Well, yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, just one last thing.
Yes,
You
sir.
think your mind scrambled now? My two just turned teenagers, so
You're two a teenager? Yeah.
just wait.
Well, listen, we're 37, and it's been a miracle. God has blessed us beyond measure this week. We really getting to the point where we just didn't know if it was going to be me, her in the woods out there. And then all of a sudden she is pregnant, and we're going to have it's going to be a boy. I'm going to go ahead and tell you now. I already know. His name's Samuel Eldon Moore, so we're excited. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no other discussion, I would move approval.
Let me just first see if there's any, is there any citizen comment with regard to this agenda item? Okay, now, Mr. Isaacson.
Move approval.
I have a motion for approval, and this is going to be for both requests?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
I'll second.
and second, again for both requests. Okay, so now we're looking at both requests. One request to motion for approval and properly seconded. Please vote. Okay, we got a 7-0 approval on those. Mr. Moore?
Well, thank you all so much.
Congratulations.
Okay, Ms. Stanhope, we're up to the conditional use with associated variance, agenda item number 8.
Case number 2015-CU-016 and 2015-V-031, Affinity Investments, represented by Scott Christopher, is requesting a conditional use to allow boat and RV storage within HCD HON, which is Highway Commercial Development, Heart of Navarre overlay. He's also requesting 2 variances. The first request is to eliminate the 8-foot privacy fence along the north property line, and the second variance request is to eliminate the 8-foot privacy fence along the west property line. The subject site is located at 2209 Highway 87 South, which is south of Nevada Street in the Navarre community. Subject site is on HCD HON, Highway Commercial Development, Heart of Navarre. This is an aerial of the subject site and surrounding properties, a close-up of the subject site. The existing land use is commercial with single-family residential to the west, industrial to the north, and vacant to the south and east. The future land use is commercial. This is the proposed plot plan. And this is an aerial with a proposed plot plan overlaid on top. This is looking at the adjacent property to the north, subject site's behind us. This is looking north of 87 South, subject site's to our left. Looking east, subject site's behind us. This is looking south down Highway 87 South, subject site's on our right. This is the adjacent property to the south. This is looking at the front portion of the subject site. This is another view. And this is the back portion of the subject site, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Stanhope. Do we have the applicant here? Good evening, sir. If you'll come down and give us your name and address.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott Christopher, managing partner of Affinity Investments, the owner of the property, 7979 Gulf Boulevard, Navarre.
And Mr. Christopher, do you have additional information you'd like to add in addition to the presentation?
No, I think the proposal, the presentation was very good. My only observation was I'm next to the north is a mini warehouse, which is already conducting some of the usages that I intend would like to have. The second thing I would say is because of the way this building is placed and because of the retention pond, none of this storage of the boats would be visible from the street because it's actually behind the building, and the visible part is encompassed by a retention pond. I'm very cognizant of the Heart of Navarre district. We appreciate everything that's trying to be done with that district, but I am next to an industrial building that's doing the same thing, and I look at his boats every morning, and we believe that this would not interfere with the spirit or the look of a Heart of Navarre.
Yes, sir. With regard to request number 2, the first variance on the north side, I see what the other board members think about it. I don't see any issue with that. You're up against a similar use.
Correct.
With the other industrial spot. The variance for the western wall setback, the 8-foot there, from the plot plan, it looked like you were going to have a 25-foot landscape buffer between the western property boundary, but looking...
That's correct. There is an existing 6-foot privacy fence there now.
Right, I understand.
And that, if they look over their fence, they're looking into 2 metal roll-up doors at the back of my building. Because of the way the retention pond will not allow you to get behind there, and because of our idea to beautify that area, there will be a 25-foot landscape buffer between that existing 6-foot fence and where any rolling stock would be parked.
Right, but from the photos, it looked like there was no existing vegetation, so you intend to install...
That's correct. It's a vacant, flat piece.
Okay. Other questions for the applicant from board members? Mr. Kemp?
Yes, thank you for coming to the board tonight. Again, on the western boundary, that was my only concern. And have you spoke to the neighbors back there? I mean, as far as...
Not in an official capacity. We met when we bought the building. They're wonderful people. It's important for us to be good neighbors, and we would hope that this would be satisfactory with them, but we don't want any bad feelings. But we think the landscaping and the density of it will actually improve what they would probably see. This is also a very small area compared to, I know there was one across the street that was just permitted, which is quite a bit larger, so we're talking about 10 to 12 spots max.
Just using the property for what you can.
That's correct.
Okay. Was there any feedback from anybody in the community? Staff?
I received no comments from the neighbors. I did get some calls with questions about the signage and what was there, but that's it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Other board members? All right, Mr. Christopher, you'll have a seat there. Open it up for public comment. Yes, sir. Good evening. If you'll come give us your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Olin Furr, and I live at 2210 Frontera Street in Navarre.
Frontera is the street right behind.
Sir?
Frontera is the street, the residential street that's right behind this property. Okay.
Frontera runs north and south, and it runs parallel with Highway 87. And all the houses that are on Frontera Street that back up to the west where he's asking for the variance separates us from the business. And I'm here speaking on behalf of the fence that you saw at 2206 was put up by the neighbors. That is an 8-foot privacy fence there. That's the Hortons, and they're out of town. And I'm also speaking in behalf of the Pennies that live next door at 2208, and I live at 22010. So that's all three houses along that section there. But that fence was put up and designed for the whole Frontera Street section that separated us there. And let me start by saying that a boat and RV storage facility is not just an 8 to 5 business. Most are keypad secured, making them a 24-hour-a-day business, 365 days a year. There's usually no attendant there to monitor business or the patrons coming in and out. The 8-foot privacy fence was put in place for a reason, and that has not changed. The separation of residential from business can only be established with the fence in place. It ensures privacy for the homeowners and security for the business. The fence provides a sound barrier for us from a 24-hour business and provides peace and quiet for homeowners. The homeowners have an investment there to protect. For example, the Hortons that back up, they have about a $40,000 pool in their backyard at 2206 Frontera. They don't want to be faced with looking at a boat storage facility. Now, the gentleman said earlier that, wait a minute, he said that it wasn't going to be visible from the street. Well, that's good, but no residents live on Highway 87. All the residents live on Frontera Street that backs up to it. And I'm thinking as a retired law enforcement officer that with this being open 24 hours a day, people coming in and out that's been on boats all weekend, they've been out to Crab Island, or are they going to come in with no one there saying they possibly been drinking, disruptive? I mean, what kind of conduct code are we going to have back there? You just don't know. I mean, it's nice if everyone could be on their best behavior, but people that have been out in the boat all day and come back may not be in that situation. Now, I must say that I was glad to see that Mr. Christopher said he wanted to be a good neighbor. And I'm saying here, if he wants to be a good neighbor, then put the fence up on the west side and give us our peace and quiet. My property backs up to the storage buildings there, and the person there is out of compliance. And I have some pictures, if you'd like to look, to show you the difference between having the fence and what the fence looks like when it's taken down. If you don't mind me coming up, I put this, but it's about 35 feet off my property, and that's my yard. But here's what I have to look at if I walk around my fence, so you can see the difference. Actually, that gentleman's out of compliance, and I made a complaint with the code enforcement because that's my fence that I put up myself. But it's about 35 feet off the property line. But if you walk behind it, that's what you have to look at. And if I didn't put up a fence,
Okay.
then you can see what I'm saying.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir. While he's passing these around, is there anybody else here who would like to address the board on this topic? Yes, ma'am.
Again, it's Laurie Gallup, 1869 Flamingo Lane. Mr. Christopher, I'm against the variance that you're requesting, but I would like to tell you that on that piece of property, I started my very first business in 2003. I opened my company in that building and grew it from just a small little business to a pretty good-sized vacation rental management and real estate business now in Navarre. And I've lived in Navarre since 1994, and I had great hopes for Navarre because, as you may or may not know, Navarre was named after a province in Spain by some folks that came through around the turn of the last century. And they actually laid out the streets and everything, and they named those streets names from that beautiful area of Spain. And there was great potential. And about 12 or so years ago, the people of Navarre actually got together and we had these meetings. And Becky Cato was there, and we worked really hard to develop this plan of what we wanted Navarre to be, because Navarre had so much potential. And then, of course, we had Hurricane Ivan, then we had Hurricane Dennis, and we had a lot of calamities befall us. But there's still a chance for Navarre to become something better than just another tourist trap in Florida. We still have a little bit of a chance. And this Heart of Navarre district is very, very important. Highway 87 is the only area in Navarre that actually has sidewalks that people can walk on. And being on the zoning, the planning board, I'm sure you're familiar with how important walkability is these days in cities and towns. So it's very important that we preserve our walkability. And it's more important that we actually have places that people want to walk to. Now, Navarre has, I don't know, probably about 10 or 12 RV and boat storage places now. In fact, we've got one up on at Cotton Bowl that Mr. Dabney that just left, they clear-cut it about 2 years ago, and they haven't even put it in yet. So we probably should force him to finish that one before we allow another one. The Heart of Navarre area is supposed to be a pretty place. And there's other areas where we can put in boat and RV storage places in Navarre if it's determined that we absolutely have to have one. Now, the zoning board has already approved all kinds of conditional uses for the Heart of Navarre and what used to be what we were hoping to have as a town center. So now, because of these conditional uses that keep getting approved, we've got a used car lot in the Heart of Navarre. We've got storage shed sales, you know, those little prefab storage units that you can buy. We've got a big piece of property that's all no trees, it's all been totally done in, and there's those storage sheds that you can buy. We've got bouncy houses just everywhere that you can go, and just all over the place in Navarre now. And we have become what is a nightmare. What we could have been, which was a beautiful place that honored Navarre, Spain, is now just becoming another little touristy trap in Florida. But I'm asking you to please quit allowing these conditional uses in these areas that we worked so hard to try to make something out of. Perhaps one day we can actually make these things happen, but we can't if we keep putting these conditional uses in areas where it shouldn't be allowed. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to address the board? Mr. Christopher, you want to come back up and offer any rebuttal comments?
First of all, I acknowledge the neighbors' comments, understand their concerns. I would say a couple of things. One, this will not affect the street at all. It does not affect the sidewalk. This is all behind the building. It's 100 feet from 87. So there's no visible interest there. There will be a privacy fence, so nothing will be there. Number two, this is a very, very small business. There won't be any electronic gates because you can't amortize an electronic gate with 10 boats at $70 a month. Now, that's my word, but my office is there also. My garage is there also. So I'm very concerned with what he's saying too. I don't want any riffraff, any problems. It's designed to be a dead storage area where there's very little movement, very small, lock and key. Unbeknownst to me, I thought that west was a 6-foot fence. I didn't know it was an 8-foot fence, which actually is the proper height. It's just his, not mine. And 8 feet is what I think is correct. But I do want to landscape it. I do want to give them more of a buffer. I don't want to cause anybody any trouble. And it's my intent that hopefully this will make it look better than it is today as she sits. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion,
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for...
Mr. Christopher, go ahead, stay up here, please.
I don't particularly have a problem with a conditional use because I'm taking it from your word that everything's going to be in the back of the building. However, we have these 8-foot privacy fences for a reason, for outside storage. Right. Why are you opposed to that? Obviously, it's a smaller property. The cost is not going to be all that much.
Well, I think there's 3 sides that I'm have to fence. Side number 1 is I'm against a mini warehouse that has an existing 8-foot chain link barbed wire fence that's been there for many years, and I look into them and they look into me, and in some ways we're both the terrible, ugly people, but we look into each other, so we're okay, we're peaceful. So I didn't think it was necessary there. The rear, which I thought was 6 and is 8, I didn't think there would be need for a double fence that were 6 inches apart doing the same thing. And I did want to add the landscaping. And on the third boundary, which has no fencing now, it doesn't require a variance. It meets the requirement for an 8-foot as well as a buffer. And the plan is to put that brand new fence in.
Just so you understand where I'm coming from, on request 1, I'm most likely going to be in approval of that. The others, the reason we have it is things change. The mini warehouses get old, something else can come in there. And all we can deal with right now is what you have and making it compliant to the rules. And so, if this was a large cost or something, I could maybe understand it a little bit more. But in my opinion, I just try to protect the future because things change. Hurricanes come in, buildings get tore down, then what do we have? We have another blueprint we're dealing with. And so that's, once again, that's just where I'm coming from. The other board members will probably think differently, and that's fine. But request number 1, I don't see an issue with, but I do like if we do give conditional uses, that we don't slap on a lot of other variances on that, because we are giving way in what was intended to be out there in the first place. That's just my take.
Well taken, thank you.
Mr. Wright.
I have a question for staff about the Heart of Navarre District. Can you explain a little bit about what that is and where it stands today? It was my understanding that a lot of those things were pushed to the side by the county.
The Heart of Navarre Overlay District runs the length of 87 through Navarre, and then east and west along Highway 98. And it has enhanced performance standards, as we've talked about here tonight. It has some use restrictions. For certain things are not allowed, other things are only allowed as conditional uses, to give the opportunity for the area to develop at a little higher standard. There used to be architectural requirements that applied within the Heart of Navarre, and those were removed a few years ago. With the downturn in the economy and that type of thing, there was concern that that was more regulation than was desired at the time, so those were removed, including the use of the Architectural Review Board. But there are still some regulations, these included, that are still in place to allow the area to develop at a higher standard than some other parts of the county.
Ms. Edwards?
I didn't know if you were going to speak, Phil.
Okay.
Oh, well, and what you just said, Becky, was to a higher standard. And I moved to the Navarre area 2004. All of the town center, all that stuff was starting in the works. I was super excited about it, so I remember that very vividly. And then, of course, everything changed. And I was around when they started making changes and allowing things to go into the heart of Navarre, when I believe the intent and the perception of when everything was in place was to eventually have something of a higher quality and a higher standard. My concern is, and I understand landowners, I know a little bit about property, and you know, sitting there and you have some revenue on it, have a return on your investment of some sort. I get that, but when I look at that whole heart of Navarre, and I just see every time that we change something or allow something that was not intended to be there, I have to say I'm not in favor of what your project. So,
Mr. Kemp, did you?
Yes. You know, I guess with the two variances, since your neighbors put up the fences, tearing them down probably wouldn't make good neighbors. So needless to say, I don't believe I could vote for those. Regarding your business, you know, I think the core of Navarre, you got two groups. You've got the group that really want to do some extraordinary things, and you've got the people that have lived there 150 years that have a different mindset, and that's not going to be settled here today. You know, I believe you have the right to use your property as you see fit.
Thank you. Mr. Hawkins.
Mr. Chairman, question for staff. On request 3, since there's already an 8-foot fence there, shouldn't request 3 be withdrawn?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, we're going to take these one at a time here. We'll do the conditional use first. Now, just let me clarify. Now, from Ms. Cato, we're going to say request 3 is not necessary?
And on your agenda, that's actually request number 2 of the variances. The 8-foot privacy fence along the west property line. When I reviewed this, I was under the impression that the adjacent one had a standard 6-foot fence. I didn't realize until the discussion tonight that the adjacent was the 8 feet that he really did need. So
Okay.
There's no need to have back-to-back fences there that
Our
just create a
acoustics are
gap.
somehow a little bouncy. Now, you're saying we're talking about the west adjacent to the residential side.
That's correct.
Which is number 3.
Okay.
Okay, so that is off the table. Ms. Brubacher?
I have a question about that, Becky. If a hurricane comes along and blows the fence down, then who's supposed to replace it?
Well, and that's a very good question, and that's something that's come up over the years in our office when there's a requirement for a visual buffer between two properties and there's already a fence there. And it is a bit of a challenge, but if the purpose is to visually block the new use from negatively impacting the existing, if the existing has a fence that already accomplishes the goal and it blows down in a hurricane, they're likely going to put that back anyway. If we absolutely require 2 back-to-back privacy fences, it creates just kind of a maintenance gap, a nuisance gap in between them by necessity, and sometimes over the long term that can be more problematic for both property owners than requiring the new one to put in a brand new fence as well.
I don't really want to see back-to-back fences, but I do think the business owner should be required to maintain a screen there.
It's my understanding he said he's going to put in the landscape buffer
They do have
behind
to
the
have a
fence.
buffer.
Can I say this? The reason that the fence is up back there is because Hurricane Ivan
Yeah, hold on a second.
The reason that the fence is there now is
We
because
need
Hurricane...
we need you to restate your name and address because of the way it's
Olin
going
Fur,
out.
2210 Frontier Street, Navarre. And the reason that the fence is there in that particular section right now is because Hurricane Ivan blew it down, and there was not an established business there, and so the homeowners put it up for privacy, and that's why it's there. But I just hate to see that the total distance of the fence all the way down Frontier, you start putting little buffers in it here and there saying, okay, you don't need one part here, and you don't need a part here, and you don't need a part there. And before you know it, every business that comes into Navarre is going to come in and ask for a variance because the guy down the street's got one, you know? So that's what I'm saying.
Sir, is the fence currently on your property? Is it
fence-
right on the fence line? I mean, right on the property line?
My property does not back up to his property. Mine is one lot down.
The fence you put up, whose property is it on?
The fence I put up is on my property.
Mr. Chairman, something we could do, if you're so inclined to approve the conditional use, and of course you haven't really discussed that yet, but if you were inclined to approve that, we could make sure that at the point of the site plan, we would acknowledge on the site plan that the 8-foot fence is existing, but that the property owner would have a continuing obligation to maintain a screening fence there should the existing one be destroyed.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'm just saying I'd rather have two fences than no fence, you know?
All right,
if
thank
your
you, sir.
property backs up to it.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Ms. Brubacher. I think that ought to be the business's responsibility.
And that's what I think Ms. Cato is saying would be included in the site plan review if we so include it. All right, what I'd like to do is we're back to request number 1, which is only the conditional use for the boat and RV storage facility within the heart of Navarre area. And we started to have a motion on that, but
Can I ask one question of Ms. Gallup real quick before we go into discussion?
okay.
I'm sorry. It's just because I missed it when you said it. How many boat storage facilities do we have in Navarre?
At least 10 or 12.
10 or 12. Okay, that's all I needed. I just
Quite a few.
I just missed that number.
So many that it's amazing.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, now we're down to board discussion and motion with respect to request number 1.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion for approval and a second. This is the conditional use to allow storage uses, specifically boat and RV storage within Heart of Navarre Overlay District. All right, that motion passes 6-1 with Ms. Edwards voting no on that one right there. Request number 2 has to deal with an 8-foot privacy fence along the north property line with the adjacent business. Is there a motion for that?
Move to approve.
Motion for approval
I'll second.
and second. Now okay, go ahead. Ready to vote.
Well, if we'll have discussion, the reason I'm moving or seconding for approval of this is because of the light-type business adjoining. I don't have a problem with one storage building looking into another storage building.
Right.
If at some point in time the adjoining businesses were to change, site development of the next business coming in would require them to put a privacy fence up. But for right now, I don't see an issue. So that's my reason for supporting.
Okay, please vote. Okay, that motion carries 5-2. Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Kemp voting no, Ms. Brubacher, myself, Mr. Wright, Mr. Hawkins, and Ms. Edwards voting in support of the variance. With request of variance, request number 3, that is not on the table now. However, during site plan review, there will be requirements in place for an ongoing maintenance obligation to maintain a visual buffer along the western boundary of this. That's standard for commercial development. Okay, so we're done with that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, just point of order, just for, I understand she's going to do that. Do we need a vote that that's a recommendation that staff does that?
I don't think it's necessary. You can if you'd like.
If you want to, put something in a motion.
It's not that I don't trust anybody, okay, but I think it's the proper procedure. We have a concern, we want to make sure the concern's met, and if for some reason she finds a reason to decide not to, then she can come back to the board and say, hey, this is why I'm not doing your request. So I would make a motion.
Okay. Go ahead and state the motion, how you'd like to be worded.
That during staff development of this property that's placed in, that he will maintain that fence.
A second.
Okay, that's been seconded. Amanda, you get that? Okay. Board members all get it? All right, vote. And I guess you have to, okay. All right, there's a 7-0 affirmation of that motion by Mr. Isaacson, that obligation to continually maintain the visual buffer. It'll be...
And Mr. Chairman, just for the record, that has nothing to do with the integrity of our staff. It's just, I think, the proper way to handle that.
We got that. Okay, that ends the main business with variances and conditional uses. Now we're down to proposed amendment to the comprehensive plan, and those of you...
Mr. Chairman, could we take a break before we get into that?
Yes, we can. I'll tell you what. I've got 9 o'clock. Let's start at 10 after 9.